I've put myself through one of the hardest things you can do as a football fan. That being, after a defeat that has left you wanting to shout and scream for 2 weeks straight, I've instead chosen to read all of the reports about Tottenham's abject reverse against Ipswich and listen to all of the Spurs podcasts that I so love when we've had a good result, but that usually I cannot stomach when things have gone badly. But this time, I felt I had to, because I wanted to get a real-time sense of where Spurs fans and journalists are about this project that we're on. And the question that keeps coming up time and time again is this: is Ange Postecoglu the right man to be leading this rebuild? Do we give him the entirety of his 3+ 1 year contract to show us that he can lead us to a trophy-laden promised land? Or should we cut our losses now and sack him, hoping that, similar to what Aston Villa did when they let Steven Gerrard go, we can get a manager who galvanises a hungry group of talented players towards the very top of the Premier League? I'll be discussing my thoughts on the future of Big Ange Postecoglu in today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening and supporting the channel. Please do give this video a like so it can be seen by as many Spurs fans as possible, and do subscribe to my channel if you can bring yourself to want to see daily Tottenham Hotspur content in the current climate. I know it's very difficult. Thank you so much, though, for all your support. So really, I want to give kind of my thoughts and almost like a pros and cons list of where we're at with Ange Postecoglu. I know it's difficult to really blame the manager in a way, because I know so many of you feel strongly that this is all about Daniel Levy and it's all about ENIC and the trickle-down effect. And I don't disagree in many ways. I know that trouble starts at the top and it all comes downwards from there. But the reality is, on a day-to-day basis, the manager who is responsible for getting those results on the pitch. And to be fair to Big Ange Postecoglu, came out straight after the game, didn't he, and said, "This is on me. The lack of consistency is on me." Now, as a positive, the data suggests, all the metrics say that we are performing far more impressively this season than we were last. However, we're currently in 10th position. Sure, we're only 3 points behind third, I think it is. 3 points behind third, but also only a few points behind 15th. And it is a very bunched up league. And maybe that is something that is benefiting Ange Postecoglu at this point, by which I mean benefiting him in terms of Daniel Levy maybe not being tempted to pull the trigger on what has always, experience tells us, been a very itchy trigger finger when it comes to this November international break and managers not quite looking like they're going to get us into European football. However, because the league is so bunched up and being only 3 points behind the top four, that means that a good run of games could see us back up there and we wouldn't be having these conversations. However, we are having these conversations, and that's because of the lackluster ability of the team to get any kind of consistency. And also, I think just the depressing nature of it always being games that we should be winning that we're losing, and before international breaks where we want to go into those 2 week gaps feeling good about the club, and instead having to have this negative down feeling about where we are at the moment. Anyway, what I want to talk about first in terms of this whole big picture, should we or shouldn't we sack Big Ange Postecoglu? And I have to go, I'm afraid, to our rivals, our North London neighbours. Arteta at Arsenal. They were incredibly brave. Edu, their sporting director particularly, was taking the can for being incredibly brave to stick with Arteta during his first 2 seasons at Arsenal. In those 2 seasons, he finished 8th and 8th again. Now, he did win the FA Cup, and that was a huge caveat. Of course it was. However, being patient with him, allowing him to build his squad, and allowing him to learn on the job in terms of management at the very elite level of Premier League football has worked out for Arsenal in the end. Is that something we need to do with Ange Postecoglu? Do we need to just accept, as he has said, to be fair to him, that there are going to be these ups and downs, but that in the long run, if we're patient with him, and if we stick with him, then he will get the team playing in a similar way, and by which I mean at a similarly successful level to what Arteta has done at Arsenal. You would have said after Spurs beat Arsenal 3-0 when Conte was manager of Tottenham and Arteta was manager of Arsenal, and we beat them to that top 4, you would have said that that would be the end for Arteta. But no, they were patient with him, they rebuilt again, and then they nearly won the league. So that, I think, is a positive in terms of what maybe should lead us to staying patient with Big Ange Postecoglu. However, Similarly, as I mentioned with Arteta, Big Ange Postecoglu's lack of experience at this very top level, by which I mean, sure, he's managed international football for Australia, and he's managed in Japan, he's managed in Scotland, but even though Celtic are a huge club, and of course managing your country is huge, the relentless pressure of the need to get positive results over and over and over again, it's different in the Premier League. It's different when you're trying to get into the top four of the Premier League. And the pressure of Spurs having already sacked huge name managers like Mourinho and Antonio Conte in the last few years, that is a weight around Ange's neck. That lack of experience, that lack of knowledge, I guess, of what it takes to really dig results out in the Premier League. It's no surprise to me that we're only winning or losing games. We're not getting draws. We're not really digging those results out. And that is because Postecoglu is just so stubbornly single-minded about this front foot positive football all the time that almost playing professionally and trying to time waste where needed and trying to dig out draws, it's not in his makeup. And that, I'm afraid, at the moment, when we're only 3 points behind third place, if we could have turned, 2 or 3 of those defeats into draws, then we'd be in the top 4 right now. And points are valuable in the Premier League, and that is maybe something that Ange will have to lower his stubbornness level about if he really wants to carry on in his work as Spurs manager, but also try and get us further up the league. To be fair to Arteta, although frankly, I don't think playing 6 centre-halves, or certainly 4 across the back 4 and then 2 pivot defensive midfielders is something I would like to see at my club, but he has learned that you have to be a little more pragmatic at times. And it has worked for Arsenal, so I do wonder, could Ange lower those stubbornness levels as he goes forward as manager of Spurs? Another positive, though, for Ange Postecoglu is the football that is being played is, in the most part, far superior to what Mourinho had us playing, what Nuno had us playing, and certainly Antonio Conte in his last kind of year at the club. Sure, in the first 6 months, he was getting us more defensively sound and hitting hard on the counter-attack, and we were scoring goals, but it was always with that defensive nature as first and foremost. It's much more fun watching Spurs now. In the most part, we're dominating games. We're trying to play 1- and 2-touch stuff and score beautiful goals. And when it works, it really, really works. So that is a huge positive for me. Let's not forget, when Conte was sacked, when Mourinho was sacked, we were begging for attacking football. We were begging for exciting stuff to be played. And we're getting that now. And sure, there are some odd, bad results. But don't forget the improvement in the football. And that's why this argument that people are saying that, Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked having only one less point than what Ange Postecoglu has now. Well, there were 4 or 5 games in a row where Spurs didn't get a single shot on target under Nuno. So it's a different level. To dare is to do is an important thing when it comes to being a Spurs fan. And Ange is trying to dare. He is trying to make us play attacking football, and he is trying to do it in the Tottenham way. So that is a positive. But on the negative side, the reality is, and I'm not sure I've heard many people talk about this, but it's true. Currently, Big Ange Postecoglu is not getting the best form out of his best players. I'm talking about Christian Romero, I'm talking about Son Heung-min, and I'm talking about James Maddison in particular. The reality is, when you're a top-level manager and you have big name players at your club with big egos, and sometimes, particularly someone like Romero, I'd say, someone like Maddison, they've got big egos and they need nurturing. He's not currently getting the best form out of those players. I'm sure there are lots of mitigating factors, lots of circumstances that we don't know about, but his management at this club will live and die by whether he can get those players playing their best football, and that is something that needs to turn around. Another one of our best players, Mickey van der Ven, he's been out for a few games, and maybe the reality is we're missing him far more than we even realise. But even if that is the case, then surely it is far too dangerous for us to be relying on one player being fit and firing at his best form throughout for us to win games. So Ange is going to have to turn that round somehow. He needs Sonny to be scoring more goals. He needs Maddison on the pitch. He really does, playing his best creative stuff, being the door unlocker, turning the key, working with Kulusevski in games like that against Ipswich and making things happen. And he doesn't need to be alienating James Maddison at all. And also Christian Romero, our best defender, also one of our best creators in reality with the ball at his feet, needs to be playing better football. And that is on Ange, and that needs to improve. On the positive side, though, he does, I'm talking about Big Ange again now, he does say the right things. He does seem to be a manager who wants to be the boss of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. He's proud to be there. He talks in the right way. He says, I want us playing the Tottenham way. He says, I wouldn't have taken on this job if I didn't know the responsibilities, if I didn't know the realities of the money they have to spend, of the strategy, of the way it is. Unlike Antonio Conte, who always just seemed like he was doing the club a favour being there, like we were lucky to have him. He doesn't slag off the board like Antonio Conte did. Now, maybe some of you will say, well, that's a negative. He should be more damning towards the board and saying that he wanted players that he wasn't able to get. But that never worked for Conte. What Conte did when he talked about Jed Spence being a club player, huge no-no. Really got the board offside. And I don't think any of the fans really appreciated that much either. And it certainly didn't benefit Jed Spence's career. So, positives for Ange Postecoglu. He does seem to want to make this work. He does seem ambitious and driven. He talks about it, doesn't he? He's worked his entire life to get this opportunity, to get into this position, and he'll be damned if he lets it go easily. So he's going to keep fighting, and I'm hopeful that as a result of that desire to be the Tottenham Hotspur manager and to be a success as Tottenham Hotspur manager, he will find ways to overcome these difficult defeats, find ways to make sure they don't happen again, and to make sure that the next international break, we do not go into it in the same horrible mood that we have right now. But to offset that, again, I'm trying to give you pros and then I'm trying to give you cons. I'm trying to give a fair, balanced argument on whether Postecoglu is the right man to take us forward. The reality is, these abject defeats we're suffering, where it seems like the team are complacent and don't turn up, they're doing Ange no favours at all. He is renowned as a motivator. Motivation is his thing. If you hear interviews with his past players, they all talk about how the words that he says in the dressing room before these games gets them so pumped up and gets them so into it that they blow teams away early doors. And it's not happening in these games. And we're conceding the first goal far too many times. Frankly, these games against the likes of Palace away and Ipswich at home, they should be his bread and butter. Because at Celtic, most games, other than the Rangers games, maybe an Aberdeen game here or there, other than those games, these kind of games where you're expected to win, there is bread and butter. They have them most weeks at Celtic, and he found ways to deal with it at Celtic, and he has to do the same at Spurs. He has to find a way, because fans are starting to get edgy. They're starting to wonder. And, when we're playing well and when it works out, like against Villa, like against Manchester City, look, and who knows, maybe against Manchester City away in our next game. It would not surprise me at all if we turned them over after having such a horrible defeat before. But he needs to find a way to win these games where we all expect to win and to get the crowd on side there as well. I had a bit of a pop at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium crowd yesterday, but I will say it again, and I said it yesterday, but I'll say it again. The players, and Big Ange has to get the motivation into the players to get the crowd behind them, to get them really feeling it and wanting us to build something at home, make it a fortress. And Ange has to do that, not just in the big games, in the games where maybe we're expecting it to be a battle or where we're expecting not to win them, but also the games where we're expected to win. Another positive, though, we are in a good position in the Europa League. We're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, and Ange Postecoglu has put his neck on the line to say, I always win things in my second season. We got Manchester United at home in the quarterfinal of the Europa League. Sure, we just lost in the Carabao Cup. Sure, we just lost in the fourth game of the Europa League against Galatasaray away. But Roma are at home next. They'll have a new manager, so that won't be easy. But I'm hopeful and pretty sure that after that defeat against Galatasaray, he'll put his best team out for that Roma game. And we beat them, and then I'm pretty sure we're almost guaranteed to be through to the next round of the Europa League. So, in the cup competitions, and don't forget, a lot of you have said, I don't care about the league this season, I just want us to win a trophy. Well, we're still in all three cup competitions, so that is still a chance, and that is undoubtedly a positive. Another positive of Big Ange Postecoglu, I think, is in reality, there are no real, genuine potential alternatives at the moment for his job that would unite the fan base in terms of us all agreeing on one man. Pochettino, gone to America. Tuchel, England manager. Amorim has now gone to Manchester United. I like Iraola at Bournemouth, but important to remember with Iraola, it took him about 6 months to get his feet under the table, to get his team playing the way he wanted them to play. And a lot of Bournemouth fans had itchy feet at that stage, wondering if he was the right man. So, it's about patience. And it would involve patience if we got someone like Iraola in as well. It wouldn't necessarily be an automatic change of fortunes. So I think the reality is those no real absolutely nailed on alternatives for someone who could come in and take Ange's place is a benefit for him. And therefore, I think that is another reason why it's very unlikely, unless we start getting pulled towards the bottom of the league, that the board and Daniel Levy would look to replace him. However, like I said at the top, this is about kind of opening up pros and cons, but wondering what you guys think. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think that Tottenham Hotspur and Daniel Levy should pull the trigger on Ange Postecoglu and say, you've helped us with the rebuild, you've got a good start, they know how to play more forward-thinking attacking football now, but there needs to be a pragmatic side too, and we need to get a coach in who will know how to get the defenders playing better too and getting us playing a little less gung-ho? Or do you think, as I do, that we should remain patient, let Ange see out his contract, let him get the players in that he wants, and let him show us, as he believes, that he is the right man to take us to the promised land, and as I mentioned at the start, a trophy-laden future? I think we'd be patient, but let me know in the comments what you think. Is Big Ange the right man? Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do press that like button if you haven't already. Do subscribe to the channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur content. And also, please listen over at Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's called the Spurred On Podcast. Just type it in, give me a follow or subscribe there. Try and enjoy your Tuesday. I know it's difficult at the moment. Come on, you Spurs.